Banana, da na 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 na, da 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 da, ba 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 Ow. Hi everybody, my name is Victoria. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're just going to do a quick tag video. Editing Victoria here. I was tagged by Sarah MG Reads. My video glitched when I said her name, so I had to cut that part, but that is who tagged me. Go check out Sarah, who is a lovely booktuber. Go check her out. I'll have her linked down below. She's a newer friend to me. I believe I met her through the Crime and Punishment read-along that we're doing right now. And this is actually her own original tag as well. And so I really enjoyed the questions. Thank you, Sarah, for tagging me. Let's get started. Question number 1 is Zumba. Name a twisty and turny book that was super fun to read. The number 1 book that came to my mind automatically when I read this question was Recursion by Blake Crouch. This is a sci-fi thriller. It is, I think, his latest release. This came out, I think, last year, and I picked it up right away because I'd heard so many good things about Blake Crouch. This was an amazing, keeps you on the edge of your seat, high-paced thriller, and I had been trying a few different thriller genres, and this was one that I loved. I realized that sci-fi thrillers are my jam. I would love to read more of them if they're going to be this good. This book was an easy 5-star read for me. I actually have a book review of it. I'll link it if I can locate the link. It's from maybe a year ago. So if you're curious about my more in-depth thoughts, I'll hopefully link that down below if I remember to do that. The premise of this book has to do a lot with memories and having false memories implanted into people's brains. So in a nutshell, there's a bunch of people waking up in the morning and realizing that they remember a life that they never lived. And so we spend our time in this book finding out why that is and following a couple different perspectives. This book was so fun. As soon as I thought I knew what it was doing and where it was going, it would go in a different direction. And it was just the most twisty, turny thriller I've ever read. So highly recommend this one if you have not gotten to it yet. Question number 2 is Crossfit. What is the most intense book you've ever read? I struggled with this question a little bit because when I think of intense books, I think of both books that I hate intensely and also books that are just in general kind of stressful to read. And so I went with the latter definition. I've tried CrossFit before and it was a little bit of a nightmare. So a book that makes me think of a nightmarish dream state is The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle by Haruki Murakami. I actually really liked this. I think I gave it 4 stars. It's been a long time since I've read it, but every time I've read Haruki Murakami, I am always just thinking constantly while reading, and you're always just putting pieces together. I guess that's why it feels so intense to me, is that you can't really relax as the reader. You're always trying to figure out how this kind of fever dream of a novel is going to come together and what Murakami is trying to say through it. It's always an interesting experience. I desperately want to read more Murakami, and I need to reread this one and see what my thoughts are now. This book juxtaposes 2 worlds. We have the normal everyday life of a man who lives in Tokyo, and then we also have this sort of magical realism part of the story where we delve into the atrocities that happened to the Japanese people during World War II. There are some pretty gruesome scenes in this book as well, and while I don't exactly remember the story specifically of this book, I do remember a few gruesome scenes in it. So that also makes me think of this book as an intense book for this prompt. Question number 3 is Burpees suck. Name a book you hated. Burpees do suck. I won't do a burpee ever again in my life. If you tried to pay me, I probably couldn't do a burpee. Also, who decided to call them burpees? It is pretty rare for me to totally hate a book because I can usually find something to appreciate. But the books that I find myself hating. Usually I just disagree with the fundamental message that the book is sending. And one of the very few 1-star books for me was Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert. And I know that this is probably a hot take. It's a very popular book, and I know it's very beloved by a lot of people. I didn't agree with the conclusions and life decisions she was making. I tend to really dislike books that elevate the sense of self above all others. And anytime I see an encouraging message of you do you, forget about everybody else, go find yourself, those books never resonate with me, and I just find them kind of irresponsible. I'm sorry if you love this book. I know a lot of people do, but for me, it just made me mad. Question number 4, Intermural Sports. Wow, I can't say that word, intramural. There's too many R's in that word. What book were you assigned to read for school, but you ended up liking it so much you couldn't wait to read it at night? My senior year of high school, AP literature class, I had a fantastic teacher. His name was Mr. Swanson, and he was amazing. He really made me love reading more modern literature, which was really cool for me to experience in high school. He really pushed a lot of more modern lit to us. And so one of those books was The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco. And I remember being really fascinated by this book. First, that he picked this book instead of like a more older classic, but also the story is super interesting. It's very much a mystery puzzle set in the 1300s. There's monks and a monastery involved, and it's very interesting. I really want to reread this because it has been since high school since I read this. Another one of those was Kafka on the Shore. He made us read Murakami as 17 and 18-year-olds. I'm sure much of this book went over my head, but I remember being fascinated by it and just not knowing what literature could do and how experimental it could be. This book really made me realize that. And so these are both 2 books that I really want to reread. Question number 5, Running and Jogging. Name a book that follows all the standard tropes, but you still enjoyed it. You know what book came to mind for this one? It's a book I don't own. I think I actually listened to an audiobook of it, but that book is Divergent by Veronica Roth. It has been a few years since I've read this, and I remember having a blast with it. And I know that the rest of the trilogy has pretty low ratings. I never continued. I only read the first Divergent book. Maybe someday I'll get a whim to read the whole series, but maybe not, because I've heard not great things about the rest of the story. But this first book was a lot of fun. It's very much a Hunger Games cookie cutter kind of book. It has a very similar premise, very similar protagonist, only it has different factions of people in this world. And I remember driving, listening to this audiobook, and just being enthralled by the story. And I feel like anytime I've seen this book come up on BookTube, it's usually in a negative light. It is very tropey, and it really does kind of feel like a Hunger Games copycat. And it was in light of Hunger Games. This came after it. I'm sure it was going for that kind of thing, but I remember having a lot of fun with this. Question number 6, Jazzercise, a book you enjoy that is outdated or published long ago. I had a hard time coming up with a book for this because I like a lot of old books. I love classics, but when I think of maybe something that was like a modern hit when it came out and now it feels more outdated, I think of the Case for Christ books. Again, there's a theme in this video. I haven't reread these in a really long time, but I remember that they were really good when I did read them. Actually, I don't think I've actually read this one. I don't think I've read Case for Faith. I think I just own it, but I have definitely read these 2, Case for Christ and Case for the Creator. I'm sure this one is more outdated now because it's about science. I'm sure there's like a lot of older science theories in this book, just because that's the nature of science. But even though they're older, I think they still have merit. I don't know. I need to read this one still, and maybe should reread these sometime to see. Question number 7, Trampoline Class. Trampoline Class is a thing? I have never seen that before. What book do you absolutely love, but it's underrated? A book that I really enjoyed that I don't hear a lot of people talk about is Till We Have Faces by C.S. Lewis. This is a retelling of Psyche and Cupid, and in typical C.S. Lewis form, he has a lot of life lessons, a lot of metaphors in this book. And this book is actually C.S. Lewis's last fictional novel. I love a good parable, mythological retelling, and this one's a good one, and I don't see a lot of people mention it or who have read it. And then the last question, who do you tag? I'm gonna tag Leslie from The Nerdy Narrative, because Leslie, I know, goes running like every day. She seems like she's a really in shape, kind of fit person, so she might enjoy doing this tag. I'm also going to tag Ramsey from the channel Rajathon. Then I want to tag Christy Lewis from Christy Lewis Dostoevsky in Space. And also let's go ahead and tag Jessie from The Bookish Mom. Thanks, Sarah, for creating this tag. I hope you guys enjoyed watching it. Go out there and be active and fit. Maybe lift some books over your head like I tried to do earlier. It wasn't very successful. But don't forget to exercise in between reading. You gotta stay healthy so you can live longer and read more books. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for watching.